My name is Natalie Brooks, and this is the story of how I was erased from my own legacy with a single voicemail, and how I answered with just one word. It was a Thursday morning in Austin. Spring sunlight spilled through the cafe windows, and the place was buzzing with clinking mugs and murmured conversation. I was reviewing a proposal on my tablet, a new eco home line that had taken me 6 months to design, when my phone buzzed. I recognized the number immediately. Mom, Sylvia Brooks, founder and CEO of Brooks& Cumbie Interiors. I thought she might be calling to discuss the LA expansion, or the keynote I'd been prepping for the Home Design Summit, but the call didn't go through. It went straight to voicemail. Odd. Then came the notification. One new voicemail. I sipped my coffee, swiped the screen, and pressed play. Natalie, the board has made a decision. Effective immediately, you are no longer employed at Brooks & Co. Please do not return to the office. Your access has been revoked, and your materials will be sent to your apartment. This is final. There was no hello, no explanation, no apology, just silence, then the automated voice asking if I wanted to delete or save the message. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, frozen, as the hum of the cafe continued around me, unaware that my entire life had just been pulled out from under me in 15 seconds. 7 years. 7 years of building this brand with my own two hands. From late nights in the design lab, to cross-country supplier negotiations, to managing high-profile celebrity homes. Every rug chosen, every color palette built, every contract closed. I had been the backbone behind the modern success of Brooks & Co. And now I was being thrown out like yesterday's sample swatches. I opened my phone. My fingers hovered over the keypad. I could have written so many things. Why? You owe me an explanation. After everything I did for you? But instead, I typed one word. Understood. And then I hit send. I didn't send that word because I agreed. I sent it because it was the only power I had left. The power to deny them the satisfaction of seeing me beg. At that moment, something inside me shifted. The version of me who sought their approval, the daughter, the team player, the heir, she collapsed like a stage set. What remained was something quieter, heavier, but stronger. As I stared out the window into the busy Austin street, I saw a delivery truck go by, one of ours, my design on the side, my colors, my campaign. And yet, it wasn't mine anymore. I realized they hadn't just removed me from the business. They were trying to erase me from the story entirely. And if you've ever had something ripped away from you, your job, your family, your sense of identity, you'll understand this moment. The quiet after the impact, the disbelief, the anger, the terrifying blank space of what comes next. But sometimes that blank space, it's not the end. It's a blueprint. If this moment resonates with you, if you've ever been cast out and forced to rebuild, stay with me. This is just the beginning. And if you'd like to follow the rest of this journey, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment about a time when you had to choose silence over surrender. Because understood isn't the end. It's the start of a new foundation. To understand what that voicemail really meant, how much it truly destroyed, you have to know where I came from. Brooks & Cumbie Interiors wasn't just a business. It was a bloodline. A storybook company built on the image of a visionary woman and her brilliant children. My mother, Sylvia Brooks, was the face of it all, a design icon in the South, known for reinventing old money interiors with modern flair. High ceilings, muted color palettes, a signature mix of reclaimed oak and silk wallpaper. She made homes look like magazine covers and built an empire out of that skill. But behind the velvet curtains and curated perfection, there was something else. Silence, pressure, and rules no one said out loud. From the outside, I was the perfect daughter. Top of my class at ISASCAD, 2 internships before I turned 20, my designs featured in Elle Decor before I'd even officially joined the company. I didn't get a fast pass. I started as an assistant, intentionally. I didn't want to be that daughter. Nepotism was a disease in our world, and I was determined to build credibility the hard way. And I did. I worked 14-hour days, redesigned our digital catalog from scratch, brought in sustainable materials sourcing before it was cool. I was the one who pushed for our partnership with Habitat for Humanity. I helped modernize our brand, expand to California, and open our second flagship in Santa Monica. By 28, I was COO. And yet, somehow, I was never enough. Not to her, not to my brother Liam. Oh, and certainly not when Chloe Morgan entered the picture. Let me explain. Liam was charming, undeniably handsome, and completely uninterested in actual work. He floated through life, changing majors in college 5 times before dropping out. He dabbled in property investment, which mostly meant crashing open houses and flipping furniture on Facebook Marketplace. But Mom always said, Liam just needs time to find his lane, as if the rest of us were racing and he was still parking. Then came Chloe, Instagram famous. 300K followers, known for her pastel wardrobe and captioning throw pillows like they were philosophical statements. Your home should hug you when you walk in. Chloe had ambition, I'll give her that, but design expertise? Zero. Yet the moment she and Liam started dating, Chloe became a fixture at the office. At first, it was subtle. She'd tag along to events, pop into meetings just to observe, sit in on creative reviews like she belonged there. Then one day, I walked into the studio, and she was sitting at my desk. My desk. Oh, Natalie, she said, flashing that influencer smile. I was just testing out the lighting in here. Better for content than the conference room. That should have been a red flag. But I brushed it off. Until the flags kept coming. Chloe started suggesting rebrands. In meetings, uninvited. Mom began quoting her. Chloe says Gen Z buyers want bold palettes. Chloe thinks open shelving is out. Chloe thinks. Chloe feels. Chloe suggests. Meanwhile, my projects were being delayed. My budget for the upcoming Green Line, a line of sustainable furniture I'd been developing for over a year, was quietly slashed by 40%. No discussion, no warning. I remember sitting across from Mom in her office, staring at the spreadsheet. Why wasn't I told about this? She looked up from her tea, like I'd interrupted a peaceful daydream. Because I'm shifting our focus. To what? I asked. Lifestyle branding, she said. Digital influence. Experience first design. Chloe's got a better grasp of where things are headed. I stared at her, stunned. Chloe's an influencer, not a designer, not a strategist. This company was built on... This company, she interrupted sharply, was built on intuition, style, vision, things you're beginning to lose touch with. It felt like I'd been slapped. That was the first time I knew something was wrong, that the walls were shifting, that I, the woman who had poured everything into preserving and elevating Brooks & Kodu, was now seen as a problem. I walked out of that meeting dizzy, unsure what just happened. But I still didn't believe they'd go as far as pushing me out. Not until Chloe showed up one morning with a clipboard and told the receptionist she was creative director interim. That was 2 weeks before the voicemail. 2 weeks before they dismantled everything I had built, piece by piece, and boxed up my legacy like a seasonal showroom display. But betrayal doesn't break you all at once. It starts slowly, with the quiet theft of credit, the sidelong glances, the forgotten invites. Then one day you wake up and realize they've been writing you out of the story for months. And the worst part? They smile while they do it. 2 days after the voicemail, my building's front desk called to let me know I had a delivery. When I went down, I found 4 large cardboard boxes, stacked on top of one another, my name scrawled hastily across each in black marker. I already knew what they were. I didn't need to open them to know they contained the remains of my career. The doorman helped me haul them upstairs. I waited until midnight to open them. I don't know why. Maybe I wasn't ready to face it. Maybe some part of me still believed someone, anyone, would call and say, "We made a mistake." No one did. Box 1 held framed photographs, company retreats, ribbon cuttings, industry awards. Most had cracked glass or corners bent from poor packing. One frame, The photo of me and Mom accepting the Texas Women in Design Award was upside down and splattered with dirt from a spilled plant. Box 2 was filled with files I'd kept in perfect order, now jumbled, some pages missing entirely. A few of my handwritten sketches for the green line were crumpled at the bottom. Someone had balled them up and then, apparently, changed their mind and stuffed them back in. Box 3, personal items, my desk lamp, the tea mug that read, CEO in the making, a gift from my assistant after I landed the Larkspur Hotel redesign, and a note, unsigned, scrawled in delicate script. It's not personal, Nat. Just business. Take care of yourself. I read that note 3 times. It wasn't Mom's handwriting. It was Chloe's. The fourth and final box held one thing, a legal envelope. Inside, a termination agreement. No acknowledgement of my role, no thanks for my service, just a standard NDA, a non-compete clause for 18 months, and a severance package, 3 months' salary. Taped to the folder was a sticky note in my mother's unmistakable cursive. Sign and return for processing. No greeting, no love mom, just sign and return. I sat on the floor, surrounded by the wreckage of my professional life, and realized something chilling. They weren't just done with me. They wanted to pretend I was never there. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Instead, I poured myself a glass of wine and opened my laptop. I clicked through old photos. Before Chloe, before the manipulation, before the boardroom became a battlefield. I watched myself in those images. Standing tall, smiling, sleeves rolled up on site, laughing with teams, presenting to clients. And I asked out loud, what changed? The answer was, nothing. I hadn't changed. What changed was their comfort with my success. The more visible I became, the more praise I received from press, clients, and industry leaders, the more threatening I became to the people who believed their power was permanent, especially to my brother Liam. It was never about competence. It was never about contribution. It was about control. And in that family, control wasn't earned. It was guarded like treasure. 3 days after the boxes arrived, I received a call from Sasha, a longtime vendor we'd worked with for custom cabinetry. Natalie, I heard you left. I was shocked. Are you okay? I almost laughed. Left. That's what they were telling people? That I chose to walk away? I didn't leave, I said. I was removed, without warning. There was a long pause. I thought so. Because Chloe called last week, pretending to be you. My breath caught. She what? Yeah. Introduced herself as head of design transition. Said you were stepping back and she'd be taking over your accounts. But she didn't even know the difference between shaker and flat panel cabinets. That's when I got suspicious. I gripped the phone tight. This wasn't just replacement. This was erasure. They were using my name to keep projects running, only to replace me after the momentum I built carried them forward. I ended the call politely, then sat still for a long time. Anger was rising like a slow, dark tide, and for the first time since the voicemail, I didn't feel powerless. I felt something else. Clear. They may have boxed up my office. They may have rewritten the story. But what they forgot was this. I built that place with my mind and my hands, and they couldn't take that away from me. After the betrayal, the silence was worse than the voicemail. Not just the kind that lingered in my apartment, the kind that came from the people I once called colleagues, mentors, even friends. No calls, no texts, not even a, "How are you holding up?" from my assistant of 3 years. It was like I'd been scrubbed clean from the Brooks & Company family tree. But in that silence, I started to listen for the quieter voices, the ones who whispered back. It started with a DM on Instagram, a name I barely remembered, Isabel Marlowe. We'd met at a sustainable design conference in San Diego, bonded over our mutual hatred for faux distressed wood. I hadn't spoken to her in over a year. Hey Natalie, just saw the press release from Brooks & Company weirdly phrased. Leadership transition? Doesn't sound like you. If you're okay talking, I'd love to hear your side. I stared at the message. For the first time since the fallout, someone actually asked me what had happened. Not as gossip, not as an industry rumor, but as a person. I wrote back. And once I started telling my story, I couldn't stop. That night, I opened a blank document on my laptop and began writing out everything: the budget cuts, the silent meetings, Chloe slowly absorbing my identity like some decorative parasite, the design proposal shelved, the plant I kept alive for years, carelessly dumped in a moving box. I wasn't writing for revenge. I was writing to remember who I was. 2 days later, another message came. This time, a text. "Hey, Nat, it's Rachel Kim. I heard what happened. I don't believe for a second that it was voluntary. You still designing?" Rachel, one of the few people in the industry I admired without reservation. She ran a small firm called Urban Nest Studio, focused on affordable, sustainable spaces for vulnerable communities, women's shelters, veterans housing, refugee centers. We'd collaborated 2 years ago on a transitional housing facility for single mothers, the kind of project I had to fight to get on the Brooks and Company docket because Mom thought it was too off-brand. And here she was now, offering a lifeline. "I'm working on something in East Austin. Small budget, crazy site, community-led concept. I want it to be beautiful and real, not just budget functional. I thought of you." I blinked. Something flickered inside me, like an old light bulb warming back to life. I wasn't sure what surprised me more, the offer or the fact that someone still saw me as more than a discarded executive. "Rachel, I'd love to hear more." We met for tacos at a food truck lot the next evening. Nothing fancy. Folding tables, paper napkins, paint peeling on the sign overhead. But the energy was real, tangible. Rachel talked with passion, not about profit margins or brand identity, but about dignity, access, materials that breathe. "Every woman who walks into this space should feel like it was built for her," she said, "not like she's borrowing something that wasn't meant to include her." That hit something deep in me. For years, I had argued for designs that meant something, spaces that weren't just showrooms, but sanctuaries. And every time I'd been told, "It's not what the brand stands for," well, maybe the brand had been wrong. Rachel leaned in. "I want you to lead the interior vision. The board gave me freedom on this one. It's yours if you want it." I hesitated. "I'm still under non-compete. I can't touch any Brooks clients." She waved that off. "We're a non-profit, no ties, totally separate ecosystem. Besides, we pay in gratitude and stress." I laughed for the first time in weeks. It wasn't a corner office or a seven-figure budget, but it was honest. It was real. It was mine if I was brave enough to take it. That night, I drove by Brooks and Company's downtown studio. The lights were on. Through the massive glass windows, I could see Chloe sitting in my old chair, scrolling her phone, a mood board pinned on the wall behind her. It was uninspired. Neutral tones, velvet swatches that screamed follower, not visionary. I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel grief. I felt nothing, because I had already left that place emotionally, long before they boxed up my things. Later that night, I texted Rachel back, "Let's build something worth remembering." And for the first time since that single word reply, "understood," I felt like I was finally starting to write a new sentence. It was a warm Monday morning when I stepped onto the East Austin site with Rachel. There was no ribbon cutting, no photographers, no golden shovel ceremony like the ones I used to plan for Brooks and Co. Just a patch of uneven ground, a half-finished foundation, and a paper cup of coffee in my hand that I had to bring myself. And yet, something about it felt more real than anything I'd touched in years. "This is it," Rachel said, hands on her hips as she surveyed the space. "Future home of the Haven Collective Center. Showers, safe sleeping pods, creative co-working spaces for displaced women, and hopefully your magic touch." I laughed. "You're giving me too much credit." "No," she said, turning to look me in the eye. "I'm giving you what Brooks and Cody never did: autonomy." That word, autonomy, lodged in my chest like a warm ember. I wasn't getting paid much, just enough to cover rent in my smaller, scrappier apartment. But for the first time in years, I didn't have to run my design decisions past a board or translate every emotional instinct into a spreadsheet. I pulled out my sketch pad and walked the property slowly, taking notes like I used to in college, where imagination came first and Pinterest boards came second. No one followed me asking, "Is that on brand?" No one whispered, "Chloe suggested blush tones instead." It was just me, the dirt, the sky, and a purpose. That week I worked harder than I had in months, and somehow I didn't feel drained. I felt charged. I went deep into materials research, calling old sustainable suppliers who still remembered me by name. Most of them said the same thing. "We were wondering what happened to you. Brooke said you'd taken a mental health break." I swallowed the bitter laugh that tried to escape my throat. "They lied," I said simply. "But I'm here now, independently." Some of them offered discounts just for the chance to collaborate again. I began documenting the process. Quietly at first. I wasn't trying to go viral. I just wanted to reclaim my name. I posted time-lapse clips of layout boards and sunrise site visits. I showed how reclaimed wood could be transformed into warmth and dignity. I shared design tips that centered inclusion, not illusion. To my surprise, people responded. Comments trickled in. "I didn't even know interiors could feel like this. This makes me want to redesign my life, not just my apartment. Isn't this the woman Brooks fired? Why would they let her go?" By week 3, my tiny account had grown from a few hundred followers to thousands. I didn't post out of spite, but I won't lie. Watching Chloe's influencer brand redesigns get politely ignored while people shared my work across community networks, that felt satisfying. Not revenge, just balance. One afternoon, while measuring the northern wall, I spotted an old woman watching from across the street. She was small, maybe in her 70s, arms crossed over a floral apron. I gave her a little wave. She didn't wave back. Instead, she called out, "You the new designer?" "I am." She squinted. "The last one promised a spa in there. Told us it was going to be a beauty retreat." I walked over slowly. "That wasn't me, but what I'm building isn't for show." She looked at me for a long moment before nodding once. "Good. We need more builders, less talkers." That stuck with me. Later that night, I opened the envelope I'd been avoiding. The severance agreement from Brooks & Co., still unsigned, still offering hush money and a graceful exit narrative I'd never asked for. I stared at the line where my signature was supposed to go. Then I tore it in half. I didn't need their money. Because I wasn't exiting, I was starting. 3 weeks in, Rachel and I sat cross-legged on the dusty floor of the site's soon-to-be kitchen space, eating tacos off of plywood, and passing ideas back and forth like old friends, instead of professionals with titles. "We need a name for what you're doing," she said, brushing her hands on her jeans. "You're not just freelancing. You're shaping something." I hesitated. "I don't want to build another Brooks & Co. I want this to stand for something else." "Then let it." I thought of every client I'd fought for, every voice I'd been told was too niche, every design that was too human, and the word came to me. "Second studio." Rachel tilted her head. "Why?" "Because sometimes your second act is where you finally get to tell the truth." She smiled. "Let's build it." The first time I realized Brooks & Company was paying attention again, it wasn't through a lawsuit or some dramatic confrontation. It was a comment, buried under a quiet Instagram post I'd made, a behind-the-scenes reel of me painting reclaimed paneling for Haven Collective's common area. Just me, some brushes, soft music, and a caption that read, "Designing with dignity. Every inch matters when it's for people who've been told they don't." The comment came from an anonymous-looking account. No posts, no followers. "Cute. Too bad none of this would exist without the training you got at Brooks & Co." I stared at the screen. I shouldn't have cared, but I did, because the comment wasn't just petty. It was a reminder. They were watching, and maybe they were nervous. That same week, a friend in PR forwarded me a press release. Brooks & Company Interiors launches Compassion Line, a community-inspired design initiative. The photos? Shiny renderings of sterile rooms with pastel chairs and faux inspiration quotes on the walls. It looked more like a luxury spa than a safe space for real people. The tagline? "Design that heals." I almost choked. It was the same exact phrase I had used for Haven in a local interview just a week before. "They're copying you," Rachel said bluntly when I showed her. I shrugged. They can't copy Heart. Let them try. But deep down it stung. Not because they were succeeding, but because they were mimicking my vision, the one they said didn't belong. Worse than that, they were claiming it. 2 days later, I got an email from an unfamiliar address. Subject: I think you should know what they're saying. Natalie, you don't know me. I was an intern at Brooks & Company last year. I left last month, but ever since your post started gaining attention, they've been telling a different story in the office. That you were unstable, difficult, and resistant to collaboration. Chloe even said you were obsessed with control and tried to tank her ideas out of jealousy. I just wanted you to know. What they're saying, it's not true. And more of us know it than you think. Take care. M. I sat in silence, reading it again and again. They weren't just watching, they were strategizing. This wasn't about business anymore. This was a smear campaign, one designed to ensure that even as I rose, my name would carry just enough stain to keep me from threatening them again. I felt a pit open in my stomach. All over again, I was back in that coffee shop, hearing my mother's voice in a cold voicemail. But this time, I wasn't alone. I wasn't powerless. I wasn't inside their house anymore. I had my own foundation now. And this time, I wasn't going to let them burn it down. I called my lawyer. Yes, I'd hired one after I launched Second Studio. A soft-spoken woman named Leah Torres, sharp as a scalpel and twice as precise. She read the email, leaned back, and said, "They're worried. That's a good sign." Good? I laughed bitterly. Absolutely. Copying your language, rewriting your story, that's not confidence. That's panic. Can they sue? I asked. Try to drag me into some kind of non-compete mess? They could try, Leah said calmly. But everything you're doing is clean. Separate clients, separate market. Plus, if they escalate, they risk bringing their own actions into public light. You sure you're ready for that level of visibility? I nodded slowly. I was tired of hiding. Tired of being cautious. Tired of letting them define the narrative. Maybe it was time the world heard my version. That night, I wrote a post. Not angry, not bitter, just true. I didn't choose to leave the business I helped build. I was removed, silently, without warning. But from that silence, I built something louder. Second Studio, a design firm centered on humanity, honesty, and heart. We don't design to impress. We design to restore, and we're just getting started. I hit post. Within hours, it had over 10,000 views. Within 2 days, it had been shared by community housing organizations, nonprofit networks, even a few mainstream design blogs. And one message stood out from the rest. Hi, Natalie. I'm producing a segment for PBS on design and social justice. Would you be open to sharing your story? I sat at my desk, staring at the screen. For so long, I'd been trying to protect my past. Maybe now it was time to own it and outgrow it entirely. I didn't expect the PBS segment to change my life. At first, I hesitated to respond. I'd spent months rebuilding in quiet, letting the work speak, letting Second Studio grow slowly and intentionally. Going on national television? That felt like inviting chaos into my peace. But then I thought about that voicemail, about the boxes, about Chloe sitting in my chair. And I realized I had already lived through the storm. This would be my lightning bolt. So I said yes. The interview was filmed in the common area of Haven Collective, our first completed project. I wore jeans and a linen blazer. No stylist, no filters, just me. They asked about design philosophy. I talked about dignity. They asked why I left Brooks & Co., and I finally told the truth. I didn't leave. I was forced out. I built that company's growth strategy, our sustainable design pipeline, our national presence. And then I was replaced by someone with no design background, no credentials, and no understanding of our mission. I was erased because I made the brand better. And that made me inconvenient. When the episode aired, I braced for backlash, but the opposite happened. Messages poured in, from women in architecture, interns in interior design, even former Brooks& Company clients who had always suspected something was off. Thank you for saying what so many of us live through. I remember your work. It was the only thing that ever felt honest. They told us you stepped down for personal reasons. That broke me. Then came the floodgates. A former project manager posted on LinkedIn. Working with Natalie was the best part of my time at Brooks & Co. The company hasn't been the same since she left. I'm glad she's telling her story. 2 days later, a junior designer added, I was part of the team that helped build Second Studio's first community center. I've never felt more valued as a creator. By the end of the week, the segment had gone viral. Second Studio's inbox was flooded, partnership offers, press requests, and one unexpected message. From Chloe at brooksliving.com. Subject, let's talk. I stared at it for a full minute before opening it. I think this has gone too far. You're damaging the Brooks name. None of this was personal. I'm open to discussing a way forward that protects both of us. Call me. Protects both of us? The audacity. I didn't respond. Because I had nothing to protect anymore. They had taken everything. And in doing so, had set me free. But not all attention is clean. With visibility came vultures. People from old circles reached out pretending to care, only to ask if I had real proof of what happened. Clients who had once ghosted me suddenly wanted to collaborate again. Publications offered me exposure, if I was willing to provide exclusive insight into the Brooks & Company downfall. I said no to all of it, because this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about truth. And more than that, it was about what came next. One morning, I walked into the new second studio space, a modest brick building on the east side, and found a letter waiting on my desk. It was hand-delivered. No envelope, just a folded piece of thick paper with my name written across the front in clean, familiar handwriting. I opened it. You built something we couldn't. You turned pain into progress. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I hope you'll keep building anyway. Mom. My hands shook. I read it again and again. There was no return address, no phone number, no I'm sorry. But somehow, it was the first honest thing she'd given me in years. That same week, a developer from Denver reached out about a new housing initiative for teachers and single parents. We've followed your work. We don't want a flashy firm. We want a studio with a soul. I smiled. They had found the right place. That night, I stood on the rooftop of our Haven Collective building. The city lights sparkled, traffic buzzed in the distance, and I let myself feel, not grief, not anger, but clarity. They had tried to bury me. What they didn't realize, I was a seed. We broke ground in Denver 3 months after the PBS segment aired. Second Studio had grown faster than I imagined, not virally, but organically. Word of mouth, referrals from nonprofit partners, small-town mayors and city developers, tired of working with firms that cared more about marble countertops than real community needs. We'd gone from a borrowed co-working desk to a team of 10. I just hired a project coordinator and our second lead designer. We had a waiting list of projects stretching into the next year. And for the first time, I had what Brooks & Co. never gave me: control, vision, and a team that trusted both. But success has a way of rattling old ghosts. I was reviewing specs for our new teacher housing initiative when my phone buzzed, a name I hadn't seen in a long time. Liam Brooks. I stared at it, let it ring once, twice. Then I picked up. Liam. He exhaled. Hey, Nat. Silence. You're probably not thrilled to hear from me. I'm not thrilled. I'm surprised. Another beat. Listen, I won't take long. Things at the company, they're bad. I heard. I said flatly. You should probably call Chloe. She left. That got my attention. What? She and Mom had it out after your segment aired. Something about brand misalignment. I don't know the full story. All I know is she took her following, signed with a commercial media group, and is now launching a furniture line without us. I blinked. Chloe left the brand? Yeah, and took half our sponsorship contracts with her. A bitter laugh escaped me before I could stop it. So now you call me. Look, I'm not proud of what happened. You know I didn't plan this. No, Liam, You just let it happen. Silence, then softer. You were always better at this than I was. At all of it. I didn't want to admit it, but you were. I didn't reply. Because he wasn't wrong. And because I didn't need his confession to validate what I already knew. That same week, the Design Integrity Review Board released a report on several companies who had misrepresented their sustainability practices. Brooks & Company was on the list. Apparently, they'd continued using my name on past project portfolios, even after my departure, even after denying publicly that I had any major design leadership responsibilities. One paragraph hit me in the chest. Multiple community housing projects attributed to Brooks & Company between 2020 and 2022 were designed under the leadership of Natalie Brooks, who is no longer affiliated with the firm. Ongoing use of her name in promotional material is under investigation. Suddenly, they weren't just stealing my seat. They were caught forging my legacy. My lawyer, Leah, moved fast. Cease and desist letters, formal complaints, a quiet, focused legal response designed not for headlines, but for results. Brooks & Company began scrubbing their site, taking down images, removing my name. But it was too late. The truth had seeped out, not just through legal filings or public records, but through people. Former staffers, clients, even vendors began telling the same story. The firm had lost its soul when it lost me. I received one more letter, this time from Sylvia. It arrived by courier, heavy cream paper, her signature cologne still faint on the envelope flap. Natalie, I made mistakes I'll never undo. I was afraid, not of your ambition, but of being replaced in my own creation. I let fear speak louder than love. I lost my daughter, and now I'm watching the company we built together crumble. I don't ask for a second chance, but if you ever feel ready, my door is open. Mom, I read it 3 times, and then I tucked it into a drawer. Not to forget, but because some doors are better left unopened. Weeks later, I stood in the middle of our Denver build site. Hard hat on, clipboard in hand, the wind sharp but clean. My team walked with purpose around me, checking specs, discussing finishes, laughing over lunch on the open framework. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't viral, but it was mine. No stolen credit, no designer of the month, no family name on the wall, just work that mattered. The email came from the Austin Women in Design Coalition, a group I used to volunteer with before Brooks & Company consumed my entire existence. Natalie Brooks, we'd be honored to have you as our keynote speaker for this year's Future of Design Symposium. Your story has inspired so many. We believe this is your moment, not to return, but to rise. At first, I wasn't sure I could do it. It wasn't stage fright. I've spoken at conferences before. I used to pitch luxury builds with a 70-slide deck and a smile that hid exhaustion. But this was different, because this stage, it was in Austin, back in the city where it all fell apart, the city where Brooks & Company still had its main office, where Mom still lived, where Chloe's name was now on display at high-end boutiques that used to carry my showroom work. I almost said no. But then I thought of the interns who messaged me after the PBS segment, thanking me for telling the truth. I thought of the teachers in Denver who cried when we revealed the first community housing design, their first real shot at stable living. I thought of the young Latina girl who showed up at our community event wearing a hard hat and said she wanted to build cities for people who never get cities built for them. And I said yes. The event was held at a renovated art gallery downtown. Exposed brick, natural light, warm wood floors. It looked exactly like the kind of project I would have fought to bring into Brooks & Co., and exactly the kind they would have called too modest. I wore a navy jumpsuit and simple earrings. No borrowed designer lookbook, no brand handler behind the curtain, just me. When they introduced me, the room stood. And as I stepped up to the podium, something in my chest cracked, not from pain, but from release. There was a time I thought my worth depended on being accepted by a room like this, that if I didn't sit at the table, if I wasn't invited, I didn't belong. But what I've learned is that belonging isn't about being chosen. Sometimes it's about choosing yourself and building the damn table from scratch. Applause. I spoke for 20 minutes. About design, yes, but also about identity, about being erased and choosing to rebuild, not out of revenge, but out of clarity, about how I had finally become the designer, leader, and woman I was meant to be only after losing everything that once defined me. And at the end, I said, I used to think success was being irreplaceable. Now I know true success is creating something that reflects your values, even if no one claps. And if they do, let it be because you built something real. After the talk, there was a line to speak to me. Young students, veteran designers, a few old colleagues from the Brooks days, some with apologetic smiles, some with nothing but awe. But then I saw her, my mother, standing at the back of the room, no PR entourage, no clipboard, just Sylvia Brooks, in a muted gray coat, watching silently. She didn't come forward, and I didn't wave. But for the first time in years, our eyes met, and neither of us looked away. Later that night, I sat alone outside the gallery, the cool air cutting through my sleeves, a paper cup of champagne in my hand. A young woman from the event approached me. She looked nervous. "Ms. Brooks?" she said. "Can I ask you something?" I smiled. "Of course." "What would you say to someone who lost everything, like you did? Who doesn't have a name or money or family to back them up?" I didn't hesitate. Start anyway. Build anyway. Speak anyway. Because sometimes the people with the loudest voices are the ones who've never been told they had permission. And your silence? That's their strategy. So break it. Loudly. And in your own language. She nodded, blinking fast. "Thank you." She turned to walk away, then paused. "I hope they were watching tonight." I smiled. They were. It was a Monday morning when the call came. I had just walked into Second Studio's new headquarters, a reclaimed industrial space we'd converted into an open-plan design lab. My team was prepping for our biggest project yet, a multi-use complex in San Jose that combined affordable housing, co-op kitchens, and a wellness center for survivors of domestic violence. It was everything I dreamed of building: purpose, function, beauty, woven into one. My assistant handed me a message slip. "Your mother called, said it's urgent, didn't want to leave more." I hadn't spoken to Sylvia in nearly a year. Not since the letter. Not since she came to the gallery and left without a word. I stared at the message, and then, after a long moment, I picked up the phone and dialed. She answered on the second ring. "Natalie." Her voice was thinner than I remembered. "I wasn't sure you'd call back." "I wasn't sure either," I said plainly. Pause. "I need your help," she said finally. Of course. That was always how it went. "What kind of help?" "Brooks & Co. is being sold," she said. "We're negotiating with a private equity firm. They want to strip it. Take the name, the reputation, but none of the community values." "And now you care about values?" I asked. There was no bitterness in my tone, just exhaustion. "I let it rot," she said, "when I chose fear over you." Silence. "I don't want it to die like this," she added. "Not completely hollow. Not after everything you gave it. I was hoping, you'd consider overseeing the final transition. Make sure it goes into the right hands." I let the request hang in the air. It was not an apology. It was a chance. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, reviewing old binders, ownership reports, internal memos I hadn't seen since the day I was erased. The version of me that once would have jumped at the opportunity to return, to restore, to be recognized, she was long gone. But this wasn't about ego. It was about legacy. And now, finally, it could be on my terms. 3 weeks later, I stood in the boardroom of Brooks & Co. again. The same sleek concrete table, the same city view windows, but everything else had changed. They were quiet when I entered. Liam sat in the corner, looking uncomfortable in a suit that didn't fit his body or the moment. Sylvia was seated at the end of the table. She looked older, smaller, as if something in her had finally deflated. The need to control, to dominate, to win. I didn't speak until the lawyers finished their outlines. Then I stood. "I'm not here to rebuild Brooks & Coty," I said. "That chapter closed a long time ago." They waited. "But I will guide this transition," on 2 conditions. I handed over a folder. 1. A full scholarship fund is established in the company's name for BIPOC design students from underserved communities. For every quarter the firm turns a profit, a new student is funded. No exceptions. A nod from legal. 2. The Haven Collective and Second Studio retain first bid rights for any future community-centered projects the firm receives. If you want to use the goodwill I helped build, it goes back into the kind of work I was told never belonged here. Sylvia didn't blink. Done, she said softly. 2 months later, the sale went through. Brooks and Company would survive, but without the pretense, without the false gloss, and with a new foundation built, ironically, by the woman they once discarded. And me? I returned to Second Studio, to my team, to the space where no one had to whisper to be heard. Our San Jose complex opened 9 months later to a packed community celebration. Music, food trucks, ribbon cut by residents who had helped design their own living spaces. There was no press frenzy, no photo ops for glossy magazines, just joy, real, unfiltered joy. One afternoon, as the sun dipped behind the rooftop garden, I stood with a young boy named Malik. He was maybe 10, curious and bright. His family had just moved into the complex. He pointed at the solar panels and asked, "Did you make that?" I smiled. Not alone, but yeah, I helped. He looked up at me, thoughtful. Cool, he said. I want to make stuff too, not just buildings, like places that feel safe. My throat tightened. You will, I said. Start with something small, but build it solid. That night, back in my office, I found the original voicemail from my mother still saved on my old phone. You're out of the family business, Natalie. Don't come back. I didn't delete it, I didn't play it either, I just smiled. Because that message wasn't a door slamming shut. It was the moment I built my own house, brick by brick, voice by voice, and this time the foundation was mine.